can actually continue with the tea as yeah, we continue also with the conversation here. We want to now look at other stories as well. Today also is a big day for the US and the North Korea Hanoi summit, which will be happening late in the day. The two presidents, that is President Donald Trump and President Kim Jong-un of North Korea, have arrived in the Vietnamese capital, that is Hanoi, for this second summit. We want to just get to hear from our panelists, what do they expect from this very crucial second summit as far as the nuclearization is concerned? What does it portend also for the entire world as far as security is concerned? Are they changing tone as far as the denuclearization is concerned as well? Let's just begin with Ambassador Erastus Mwencha, briefly.
Well, Debarl, there was precious little in terms of content of what was discussed in the first meeting that took place in Singapore. And it was more of a photo opportunity, and giving, actually, the beneficiary of that outcome was North Korea. And since then, the president of South Korea is accepted in the international community as an interlocutor in this matter. But beyond that, you see, North Korea has continued to pursue its policy unabated. Mm-hmm. And that is because U.S. is in a very awkward situation, because President Trump wanted to give an indication that he has brokered a peace. He thrashed what had been done by his predecessors, and now he wants, as usual, create a crisis and find a solution so that it looks like he has come up with something significant. To say the least, I really don't expect much from there, because you don't even see preparations that have been made to say the draft agreement does give these indications, because the ultimate, of course, objective is to limit North Korea's capacity to develop delivery and enrichment of uranium, so that they are not able to have war arsenals that can destroy the region but also reach United States. I am not sure that is going to be on the cards.
Mm-hmm. Right, Irungu.
I don't actually have a major comment on here. I'm sure there may be others that would like to
Hassan Khannenje.
You know, I think Donald Trump has always wanted to show that he's better than any other president in the U.S. history in everything, including foreign policy. And when it comes to substance, both the previous meeting and what is going to be discussed even in this meeting, there is very little that is going to come out. Nothing, no progress will ever be made on that path with North Korea, which has been very successful in being rehabilitated technically, you know, to become a normal state in the international community. If, for instance, the U.S. is not willing to remove its troops out of South Korea. Mm-hmm. You know, it's just as simple as that. Now, as long as North Korea thinks they still a threat from Washington, they're not going to denuclearize. Mm-hmm. Now, is Washington ready to move 30,000 troops from the border of North Korea? The answer right now is actually no. And it's a lot because of the, you know, the shift towards Asia that, you know, the Obama doctrine started, and just generally the geopolitics of the world around there. It's not likely that it's going to happen soon. If it does, I will be surprised. But, you know, part of also the problem is, you know, Trump is running his own race, but then here you have the Congress and the Senate that it's not exactly enthusiastic, and right now, you know, the House is not exactly in support of Donald Trump. And there are a lot of things that he won't be able to achieve ultimately, actually, without the support of the House and the American people. Number two, negotiations such as this ones take a long time. Chances are Trump has 2 more years in White House. Now, will this really last? And of course, North Korea knows that this guy might not really be around for a long time, but we can buy enough time and extract enough concessions. Number 3, the U.S. has not still opened up the pockets of money to Pyongyang. The sanctions are still in place largely. So what progress are we talking about? This, for me, is just another opportunity for photo-op and for Donald Trump and his bromance with Kim Jong-un to be seen that they're doing something, but I don't really see anything substantive coming out of this. I will be extremely surprised. But with regard to, if things don't break down and they're still just able to talk. It's actually a success for both Kim and Donald Trump, especially to his base politically. It is not for the United States, it's not even for the world.
All right, so you hold with this view, you agree that this is all about style and no substance? Another photo op and a bromance, cemented between Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump?
I think mine is speculation. One, we don't know what Trump can do. We know he surprises people. But there are two things I think he could surprise the world with. First, he stopped exercises in South Korea without even discussing with the president of South Korea. That is Donald Trump. There are two things North Korea has been asking for. Declaration to the end of the war, which Trump, the way we know him these days, can quickly do it in Hanoi. And that means moving troops from the demilitarized zone back to the bases. And number two, Trump can actually start opening some taps for North Korea, because this man, the psychology that you see in Donald Trump, is a man who believes in himself, myself, I, and me. So anything that he'll wish to do to give credibility to his name, this man has the capacity to do that. So my speculation is we could just hear something very strange coming out of Hanoi for purposes of uplifting. And I'm looking at those two things. And declaration to the end of the war, which North Korea has been asking for a long time. And therefore, when you declare that the war has ended, it opens up many other doors for North Korea in terms of foreign direct investment and everything. And probably starting to put in some funds, slowly edging out the restrictions in terms of trade. Because we know before this guy went to Hanoi, he had gone to China. He had talked to Putin. And therefore, whatever Hanoi is taking to her, I mean, whatever North Korea is taking to Hanoi could be a regional thing. Okay? And it's likely that Trump, because of his ego and whatever, could just make up a statement that could shock the world. That is my speculation.
All right, let's hear from Professor Noah Midamba.
Debarl, I agree with two of my colleagues, except my departure is a little slightly in that Trump is not fighting or a conflict with North Korea. This conflict is much more complex than Trump himself understands. Trump has a conflict with China and also with Russia. North Korea still have a stockpile of nuclear warhead. The original focus was to complete verifiable denuclearization of North Korea. It's not going to happen. And then I agree with my colleagues. Trump is unpredictable. He's going to make statements which are not supported by facts or by people who have spent years working on this situation. And therefore, it will be a short term, not a long term kind of thing. So it's more a photo op.
It's more of a photo op. Okay. Also, let's see what is happening in Nigeria. So far, supporters of Nigeria, as we saw earlier, Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari celebrated at his party headquarters in Abuja after tallies showed he won a second term at the helm of Africa's largest economy and top oil producer. A tally by Reuters based on Electoral Commission results showed Buhari of All Progressive Congress Party had won by 56% compared with 41% for other candidates, a businessman and former Vice President Atiku Abubakar of the People's Democratic Party. But also, as we're commenting on this, the most consternating is the turnout by the youth. Nigeria's youth becomes the rising power in presidential polls. They came out in force on this. Let's hear from Irungu Houghton. This was just cast in stone. Earlier on, we said that there was a low voter turnout. That was Khannenje saying. So that was actually predisposing Buhari to actually win this election. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think the win by, I think it's about 4 million voters, in a sense, will, I mean, in the absence of any controversy that's raised by independent election observers, I think will probably seal the election for Nigeria. I mean, I think the bigger challenge that young people in Nigeria probably are thinking about right now is you've got a situation where the economy is dipping. It's generally not growing fast enough to deal with these young, very, kind of restless and also very eager to contribute to nation building, these young people. And you've got corruption that is beginning to find its way closer and closer to Buhari. There's no evidence that Buhari himself has benefited, but definitely many of the people around him, and maybe this will be his opportunity to clear the cabinet. And by the way, just to mention domestically, I think also there is an issue about cabinet renewal, and I think at the moment, trending at the moment is something, sack these CSs, even here in Kenya, but maybe for Buhari, this is the opportunity for him to clean up. And the third challenge, I think, for Nigeria at the moment is the security question, particularly in the northern part of the country. And we saw in Maiduguri, even over the last week or so, a number of attacks. So I think for what Nigerians, for the incoming president, he's got a new term. But I think the question will be whether he's able to generate a new level of vigor that does not leave him being quoted as Baba Goslo. That's I'm told by Nigerians, that's what they call him, Baba Goslo.
Baba Goslo.
There's vigor that's needed in the second term. Let's hope he finds it.
I like it. Baba Goslo, or on the other hand, let's hear.
Okay, let me start from this. Africa is Africa. I am a member of a forum called the African Security Forum. And majority of the members on this forum are Nigerians, Ghanaians, and Cameroonians. I think one thing that you read from these discussions and arguments and hate speech is that in Nigeria we still have serious problems of religion. And most of the things you read about Nigeria, the Fulani, the Hausas, the Igbos, is purely tribal. And I think it is so in-depth that if Buhari has to work on this, because I could read even some of the things talking about Christianity, if this man gets back, then we Christians are finished. And you see, these are people who live in the diaspora. These are Nigerians who are exposed. But there's serious tribal hatred in Nigeria that I think one of the things Buhari should do, hopefully, within the 5 years, because he has tried to tame corruption, but he's not been able to do it. I think he needs to work on religion and tribalism in Nigeria. And once he does that in the next 5 years, I think he'll come out, as we call him Baba Goslo, but I just let him deal with those things so that by the time he leaves in the next 5 years, at least Nigeria will be in a better place as a stable, emerging country in terms of political stability. Because what we see from outside, you think Nigeria is very stable. But what you hear from the people from inside Nigeria, Nigerians themselves, there are serious issues on tribalism and religion, religious differences. And once he deals with those two, I think, even as he fights corruption, he could leave the country a better place than when he found it.
All right. Let's go to...
Just a comment on that.
Just a comment on it? Okay.
Well, first of all, I want to agree with my colleagues what they have said. But there are two indicators here of what is happening in Nigeria. You raised a question about the youth. First of all, the low turnout is itself an indication that the population was perhaps not fired up in terms of choice, because when they looked at Atiku was vice president to Obasanjo, and it is alleged that he wasn't very clean. And so people perhaps looked at it and they said, well, the devil we know then is better than, because in any case, even with all this corruption mentioned, it hasn't really touched on the president. The only thing that has been talked about the president is this goes slow is because of his health.
Yes.
And so the question then is, going forward, is he going to be able to garner enough energy, particularly in his second term, and lift the Nigeria economy? Because Nigeria economy, it is the powerhouse for Africa. Nigeria economy is the biggest. South Africa, Egypt, Kenya, and all that. If these economies don't do well, Africa doesn't do well. And I think it is sad that to see somebody with low energy, the country with low spirit in the second term. Let's hope something happens and we see a check-up because otherwise we are in for a very slow turn of events.
Nigeria just surpassed India to have the largest concentration of poor people on earth. It is the largest economy in Africa and the largest number of poor people. And the head of state is going to be a go-slow person. I'm not sure what the result is.
I'm just thinking when that pertains to the future. You know, you have, and it's not bad, but I think what appears to be two geriatrics, you know, running for president. One of them, a former military ruler who spent most of his first time in the hospital bed than actually in the office. And then you have the other one who was so tainted in the first term that for a long time Obasanjo actually had disowned him until, you know, last minute.
Correct.
Yeah, and so you have options who are not exactly perhaps inspiring to a lot of young people. And what does that mean now for younger Nigerians? But there's also something else, and you did mention about those differences. Of course, a lot of them are historical, and they go back. And we were discussing 2 weeks ago when I said I think Buhari will be winning, and not because he was going to steal the election. It's because of the ethnic and religious makeup of Nigeria and how they vote. And just based on that, you could actually make a prediction on who was likely going to win. What some Kenyans say, the tyranny of numbers. Yeah, and it was very apparent. So I think you have a lot of young Nigerians who are so disillusioned with the direction of the country that they're unable to get leadership that is active, because Jonathan Goodluck brought a lot of bad luck actually to the country, because the country was very corrupt and he was much younger man. So let's hope perhaps we are going to have new progressives among those who've been elected, because there are a lot of young people who've been elected in office in this cycle.
All right. Let's also come back home and just discuss a bit of things that needs to come to the highlight, especially in regarding to licensing of guns. We've seen a very high-tech military caliber, guns or weapons with civilians. Maybe you can comment on this, Dr. Werunga. And also, I know today is 1 year since Meru student leader Evans Njoroge was killed by a police officer, and we want to know what has been the progress so far. Irungu, Houghton, you can actually handle that very briefly as we prepare our headline thoughts as well.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing what the minister is doing, but I also believe in having systems in place. People can surrender, but you must also put in systems that will ensure that those who don't surrender are forced to give up. So Matiang'i has very good ideas. Even in the Matatu, he came out, ran around the show, he went quiet. If you drive on Kenyan roads, the Matatus are back to the same. So my wish for Minister Matiang'i, CS Matiang'i, is that even as he does these good things for the country, let him work on the systems that will sustain what he wants to be achieved. Because if you make it a photo op, like we say, and then after that, there are no systems to ensure that you sustain what you want the country to have, then it will be bad for this country. How a person in this country can have a rifle as a personal weapon, I cannot understand.
High caliber fire weapon.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Nobody is allowed to have a rifle as a personal weapon.
It's a corruption now.
That is serious corruption. And even as he deals with these people who are surrendering, those behind that should be held to account. Because that's the only way you can hold these people to account, to ensure that this country does not lapse into that again. There are people who should fake licenses, they're still with us. There are people who issued fake letters to these people to own arms, they're still with us. There are people who allow these fellows to bring in these rifles, yet the country does not allow an individual to own a rifle in this country. So who are these people who are allowed to bring in the rifles for the Kenyan person to buy? You see, those are the things we need to be looking at. So that even as we deal with this issue of licensing of people, the chipping and the personal data and whatever will not make sense, Debarl, until the minister puts in systems. Sacking the board and bringing in new people is just one of the things he should do. But I think my wish for Dr. Matiang'i is that whatever thing he touches, let him put in systems that even when he's not around, the systems are taking care of all those problems.
Thank you. And of course, that we'll can discuss much later deeply in other programs on Wednesdays as well, as far as, you know, gun control in this country is concerned. Let's just hear from Irungu Houghton with the story of the university students. So far, this is 1 full year. Nothing has come to the fore as well. This is Evans Njoroge.
It's actually one year to the day almost that Meru University Secretary General, student Evans Njoroge was shot in a maize farm in Meru, and he was pursued by an officer. The officer has now been arrested. He's been prosecuted for the case and is currently facing criminal charges in the Meru court. And I think for many of his family and the Kenyans who have been really concerned about the spike in unlawful police killings and also extrajudicial executions by officers, it's a moment really to just reflect on the broader question of our security sector reform. And what we've seen in the last few months is really some progress, I think, in terms of high-level statements. I think the minister, the interior minister, the office, the director of public prosecutions, and also the director of criminal investigation have all in the last 1 month said that they will not spare any officer that uses their weapon in a reckless manner or unlawfully kills a Kenyan. And I think that message needs to be heard across not just all the police officers, but really across the country. I think the other 3 things that we need to focus a little bit more on is really increasing capacities around human rights training for our police officers. We need to also think about active crime, I guess, which is crime scene management, so that prosecution of criminals is done in a manner in which it gives confidence in the system. And then I think the second thing is really thinking about how the judiciary can basically have continuous case hearings, so that these cases don't take very long. At the moment, the 10 police officers that have been convicted in the last, I think, 1 month have all had cases that have taken between 3 years to 5 years to conclude. And I think that is just too long for justice to happen. Very lastly, I think for many of us, we're beginning to look at the National Coroner Service Act as a place where we need to put some implementation thinking. And the Attorney General needs to put in some resources to do that. But just lastly, with the risk of looking like I'm advertising an event, I think one of an important issue that's happening, an event that's happening this week, is really a hearing that's been organized between the Director of Public Prosecutions and the community of Kayole. And that's taking place tomorrow between 9 and 1 o'clock in Kayole. And the information is available on social media for people who are interested.
Right, thank you. Thank you very much. And as you're winding up, also, let me just read 1 or 2 tweets here. We have Mohammed Ahmed saying, Kenya should be talking about the state of corruption and poor youth empowerment in Kenya before dipping your noses in other countries. I think we've had a bellyful of this every day, right? We should not be just being level gazing and talking about corruption every day. Kenyans, this is just becoming numbingly now boring, and people are getting tired. There can be a view of fatigue on that as well. Also, Aremo Odera is saying, why so much? Still the same thought, concerned with other nations. When ours we cannot do anything, when we cannot do anything about it. We have Jacob Abere Mtalala saying, I'm impressed by Ambassador Hadi executing his points on his diplomatic duty and being face of Tehran in Nairobi. No matter how your country looks on face of international community. Alex Chirchir, Ambassador Faraj story not adding up. CCTV cams available everywhere nowadays. You mean Iranian embassy has none? Wherever they met has none too. Why bypass foreign affairs? And lastly, the Kush as well. Is it in order to turn the show into an interrogation room? If so, please interrogate our very own diplomats who have been advancedly named in various issues as well. And Gadoni, lastly, wasn't he caught on CCTV buying the tickets, yet he knew they were criminals? Why was he doing this? This fellow is guilty, but unfortunately, as diplomatic community, those are reactions on social media. We want to thank our panelists this morning for this cogent discussion we've had, after the issues we've discussed this morning, and also for your valued company and reactions on social media. Thank you very much. Have a lovely day, and the Living with Us is up next.